capital.
First name Sandy.
Sandra.
Sandra.
But bring your writing.
Yeah. And then
Marty.
Kirk. And we can last. What was it?
Marty.
Yep. I have everyone.
Well, it's nice to see you all in person again. So I'll call the meeting to order. Do we want to do introductions? Is there who all is here, who's not? And I don't know if we all know Nick or that he knows all of us. So let's just quickly go around doing the sort of introductions. I'm Dick Olmsted, current chair of the tree board and second longest serving member.
I'm Marty Byrne. I've been on the board for a couple of years. Sandra Lamar, I'm on the tree board, one of the newer members.
Julia Beth, longest lasting, not oldest. Although maybe I am, I don't know.
How long have you been on Medicare?
10 years.
You're old. You're the senior member. Doug Sprugel, tree board.
Hi, Larry Goldman, City Council liaison.
And Riley Bushnell.
Assistant planner.
All right, thank you. Okay, I did actually come up with something for a short reflection today. So this is, I'm going to read some excerpts from a article that was published in the Spokesman Review, Seattle or Spokane Spokesman Review, but which I saw because it was reprinted in the Seattle Times a couple of weeks ago. The title of it is "Where You Live in Spokane Can Mean the Difference Between a Warm Day or an Unbearably Hot One." On a summer day, volunteers drove through Spokane collecting thousands of measurements of temperature and humidity in an effort to map out urban heat islands. The result was what they and residents knew for a long time, but never confirmed with data. Some neighborhoods are hotter than others because of what's known as the urban heat island effect. It occurs when pavement and buildings absorb heat and create higher temperatures than in shaded neighborhoods. The official high temperature July 16th at Spokane International Airport was 88 degrees. But Henning, the person doing the work, said temperatures reached as high as 94 degrees in parts of the city where tree coverage and green spaces are sparse, or where pavement and buildings are plentiful. The nearly 14-degree difference highlights the urban heat island effects in which the open commercial area with few trees at Trent and Regal was hotter than the downriver park where dense vegetation and a nearby river provided a cooler environment. He said he has preliminary talks with the city. He said preliminary talks with the city have been encouraging. Tree plantings is one solution the city has implemented to bring shade and cooler temperatures, as well as a host of other benefits to neighborhoods. Katie Kosanke, urban forester of the Spokane Parks and Recreation Department, said her department is conducting studies about canopy cover in the city, but the Center for Climate's heat map will also produce one. This really is helpful in providing more information to support plantings, especially in low canopy neighborhoods. Odegaard said that city is working with the Lands Council to plant the trees as part of a program called Spokanopy. The program's objective is for every neighborhood to have 30% canopy coverage by 2030. Kosanke said some neighborhoods like Shiloh Hills and Northeast Spokane are low as 11% canopy, Hilliard 13%, Nevada Heights 13.6%, and Logan at 13.9%. Spokane 2020 Urban Tree Analysis Report concluded that while the size of the neighborhood contributed to the amount of tree canopy coverage, it also appeared the distribution of tree canopy correlated with the neighborhood's income level. It said tree canopy coverage is high in South Hill neighborhoods, which are wealthy like Manito, and low and lower income areas like Logan. The benefits of tree canopy coverage in the urban area have been identified in our priority for the city of Spokane to take action on to promote equity and justice across the city. So I bring this up because one of the things I would like us to work on in the coming years is trying to develop a strategy for increasing tree canopy, especially in low canopy areas, which I think is very noted when we talked about this before, also tend to be the lower income and socioeconomic lower areas. So
lower income by Lake Forest Park.
Lake Forest Park, right? Are you talking about Lake Forest Park? You're not talking about.
Which is not really very low by a lot.
Through the town, right? Yeah, there are certain neighborhoods where the trees, or the houses are crowded and yards are small and trees are few. I mean, it'd be nice to use resources of the city to encourage those neighborhoods to have more trees. Okay. Well, we did introductions, so adoption of the agenda is next. I wanted to add one item to the agenda under new business, and that is preliminary look at the 2023 work plan, which basically right now consists of the 2022 work plan, which will be our template for developing our work plan for 2023. Anybody else have any?
I just had one.
Okay.
I did notice on the minutes from last time that my name is missing off the missing members.
Was not listed either as president or as.
I was just, not there, and I should have been added to it. Or absent.
I didn't, yeah,
It's all good.
yeah.
That was the only thing I noticed.
We don't have a spot on here for adopt or approving the minutes, so let's do that now. Do you have any other changes or additions, corrections to the minutes?
Just one minor grammatical thing. I think the F foundation was not capitalized.
Anything else? All in favor of approval? Well, let's see, adopting the agenda first. All in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes?
I second.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Next item agenda is citizen comments. But I don't see anybody present, and it doesn't look like anybody online.
Nobody's attending the meeting other than us.
Okay, so I guess we can move right on. Good. Communications. The next meeting will be held in person at City Hall on Wednesday, December 7th. So mark your calendars. Announcements. Do we have any announcements? I think under this is where I would ask somebody, either Riley or Nick, maybe to bring us up to date on the arborist search.
Steve sent, he actually told me verbally, today. The update is he has narrowed the candidate pool down to 3 people. I think at least 2 will advance, to the final interview.
Okay. Any idea when that
I don't have a timetable. I think he's still working on that.
is? It but before the next meeting, I presume.
Yeah, we'll just say that.
Well, we look forward to it.
Did we ask if one of us could sit in on the interview?
I can bring it by him.
Assuming somebody wants to.
I know us planners will be, but yeah, I can certainly ask.
Yeah, I think if someone wanted to, and the city were willing, it might be nice for both the arborist candidates to get some of the people to know where they're on. Any other announcements? Okay, old business, moving right along. McAleer Creek restoration, we didn't have any report on this last month, but I think Julia has some news for this one.
Well, we, after some back and forth, we realized we have $8,000 left to work with. And it was supposed to terminate at the end of December, but we put in an extension for next June to continue work on it. And I've spoken with Applied Ecology. I was going to meet with their on-point person yesterday, but her kid was sick and she couldn't meet up. So we're going to meet next Monday Gonna do a walkthrough. We are not gonna use any more herbicide. Much as I would dearly love to, but it's just not worth the community hassle to do so. So I think that majority of what we're gonna do is weed control. And, Malia, who's the woman I'm working with, had a very good idea. Since so many of the cedar trees have been decimated by mountain beaver. We're gonna put in a bunch of spruce trees. I don't think they like those as much. But they're pointy. And the few that we put in, have done very well. So we'll do that, and then on the, there's one place at the bottom end of where it's working on the roadside. Where we don't have to worry about mountain beaver, or deer. If deer get too close, they'll probably get hit by a car, so they're probably gonna go there. We'll probably put in a few more duck fir there, or cedar. Probably duck fir, because actually it's a fairly dry site, but get a few more in there, because that's been pretty sparsely planted. And, most of the money is just gonna go to paying the contractor, which is Applied Ecology. To go in and just weed now, weed and plant this winter, because there's some areas that really could use it. And then, and I'll figure out in consultation with Malia, who's very experienced in restoration, what she recommends. But mostly it's just gonna be up to them. And, we should use up the majority of the money. It's, the grant was for 45,000, so letting 8,000 go by the by is a substantial portion of it. Gotta do a bit more with it, or I should say Malia is, because I'm just gonna let her do it. I'm here. We also have some wire left, Marty, so excited to know that we have wire left. So we may have another cage making party in the garage. Although actually, 2 people can whip it out in no time, just a one bale. We'll put those around the cedars, but what's happened to those who don't know is that the mountain beaver somehow have chewed off many of the small cedars in one area. And in one case, they actually burrowed down and came up inside the wire. For a 5, expensive 5-foot tree. They just lop them off this far above the ground. How they get all the branches out of there, I do not know, but they seem to, because they're all gone. The deer have not been much of a problem. The bear roots that we put in are really thrived this summer. And some of the willows look good, though we don't know until next year if they really can go. But I'd say the majority of them leaked out. But those willow stakes have reserves in them that allow them to leaf out the first year, whether or not they fill out enough roots and done enough photosynthesized to be able to do another use. But those were relatively cheap to do. But really, everything else looks good. There's not a lot of, we had a huge amount of jewel weed, and I actually went through myself and weeded all that out before it flowered last spring and early summer. Composted huge piles, but there's still not weed in the creek, but I think that's a losing battle because it's so much upstream. It'll continue to come down, but we'll see what manual will do with that. They're small. And that's about it. So I hope to finish up long before June. But we'll see.
Anybody have any questions? About this? You need help, we can always ask. Some of us would be willing to help out for a few hours someday.
We'll get some have a cage making party, which means I have to clean my garage again.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the tree code amendments updated. I summarized this last time, but most of the recommendations we had made were adopted, but one of the ones that was put on hold was the one for minimum size for exceptional trees. There's a handout that comes from the tree code. Our proposed changes to this is one of the handouts is here. And the council, and I think this is smart, would like to see the results of the inventory. So we know, are these realistic? I mean, if we don't have any trees that are this big in Lake Forest Park, or so few that we're not really saving much, then maybe we should have smaller minimum sizes for exceptional trees. Or conversely, if we've got a ton of trees that are over the size to the point where it would be difficult for homeowners to manage some property, that maybe we can make the size larger. But my sense is that we're going to find that there are not a whole lot of trees above, especially above the sizes that we want originally are in the tree code, which are the larger numbers on here for the most part. For the big leaf maple and Douglas fir, it's 42 inches for example. But the question that arose 2 or 3 meetings back, which I think Doug articulated and that I wanted to have some time tonight to discuss, was the idea about whether we should have any other trees on the any other tree species on this list. So as it's drawn up, these are just our most prominent native conifer and broadleaf standing fern trees. Douglas fir, grand fir, western hemlock, western red cedar, and western white pine for the conifers, and then big leaf maple and madrones for the broadleaf standing ferns. These are our most common and abundant native species here, and we have often emphasized natives as critical to the canopy and to the ecosystem. But the issue arose when there was a discussion about a permit to remove trees in some place that we don't need to revisit. But there was a large non-native tree that was argued it should be retained because it's big. And it's, even though it's not a native tree species, it offers a lot in terms of canopy coverage and urban heat island mitigating effects, things like that. So I'd like to open it up to discussion about what the pros and cons are of opening up the exceptional tree protection list to either explicitly adding more species, or simply having a size minimum for any tree that's not one of our natives that are listed that would be considered to be an exceptional tree, and therefore would require some additional, would afford some additional protection, require some additional justification for removal. Doug, can I turn to you to sort of?
I think I've had some emails back and forth with Dick, shared it with some of the people, but not everybody. We have our sort of vision statement effectively in the city code that says why we like big trees. The vast majority of them apply equally well to any kind of tree. You might say 1 or 2. If you're trying to get the whole native community here, then native species are preferable. But for providing shade, for providing air pollution protection, for fixing oxygen, carbon, holding on to carbon. We have a long list of things we think trees are wonderful for. Root protection, particularly, or soil protection. And they essentially all apply to all trees, regardless of whether they're native. So I think if that's the reason we are protecting trees, then we probably ought to protect all trees. And my personal recommendation would be to set a lower size, upper or lower, we're going to call it a size limit, and protect anything over that size. And if we want to get particularly protective of certain species, set a lower size limit for those species, but just a number that is a big tree, period. I know we have, if I'm not mistaken, we have madrone on here at 12 inches, because when we last discussed this thing 4 or 5 years ago, there was one council member who really wanted to have madrone on there. And I think we set it at 12 inches, otherwise it would protect anything. So it's not very many big madrones.
Yeah,
I don't think that was a terribly good reason for doing it.
so that was the size that was in the previous version, the adopted version, existing version. I don't know anything about its history. It's true, there's not very many over 12 inches.
Right. And it is a native tree, so we couldn't put in a special thing, we save all trees over 12 inches or 36 inches. And but madrone is so unusual. it's such a hard time around here doing it extra protection. We could do the same thing for, I know you're a big fan of red oak. We could do the same thing for big red alders. I didn't know.
Not a big fan of it all.
But we could, we could put in special size limits for some species. The limits here, if we just made it 36 inches across the board, it would protect 1 or 2% of the trees in the county and the state. I mean, assuming the new survey is not different from the old one. And before we present to the council, we'll wait till we have the data from the new survey. But that's the kind of percentage we're protecting. I think this, what Seattle was looking for, the city of Seattle was looking at a 30-inch size limit. I think that might protect 3% of the trees in the city. But I've also started looking at basal area, which is what colleges normally look at for tree size. That would be protecting like 20 or 30% of the basal area.
That's
That's
where a little canopy, extent of the canopy reach, is that what you?
no, basal area diameter,
Oh, okay.
the cross-sectional area of the tree. So you protect quite a large percentage of the basal area, and that may be more than we really need to do. So anyway, when we have the data to work with, we can have a discussion about it. But I do think we ought to. I do think it would probably be a good idea to protect all trees of a certain size. Unless we want to change the section of the tree code that says why we protect trees.
Julia.
You need to exempt some things like hollies.
Holly?
Holly trees.
Well, I bet they're gonna be 36 inches.
Be surprised.
The one I know that was
I mean,
a point of discussion soon after I was on the board, maybe one of the first picking this up was the populous trichocarpa,
right.
which can get really big, but big ones tend to be really sort of almost hazardous.
Is it spelled P-O-L-Y? Poly.
Holly.
Poly. Wow.
Holly and the ivy.
I heard.
The pop-
some different. Okay, gotcha.
The cottonwoods,
Oxybon.
when they get really big, tend to start to rot and shed limbs and so on. So
Yeah, I have a neighbor who would dearly love to get rid of her poplar trees, but just doesn't want to spring for it's gonna cost her because she feels they're a hazard.
How big are they?
They're huge.
There used to be a bunch of them down on the Goldman Trail right here that were really big.
Well, they were all taken out because a couple had fallen on the road. And so those were all replaced with some sort of cedar. My first year on the tree board, spent watering one of those every 2 weeks because they were relatively new. I think King County put them in because the county is responsible for the vegetation along the Bird Gilman. But Lake Forest Park took over watering a lot of things down there.
I remember the tree that fell over and basically took out the intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and power line.
And we had the whole stoplights, everything.
Marty?
Did you say that non-natives are excluded from this?
Well, so right now, these are the only trees that are listed, that are identified as having exceptional trees in the city.
Well, I would agree with Doug then that we should look forward to including non-natives, just based on what I've been reading lately about climate zone tree, that climate change is gonna push some trees out of the stone, so we might want to make room for others.
I just thought of, it's all over the place in Horizon View. It's not English hawthorn, but that might be it.
Well,
Anyway.
hawthorn is abundant up there, but
It's got a red berry.
yeah, it doesn't ever get very big.
It's pretty big up there, but maybe it's not over 36.
It's a big tree.
Yeah. So,
I actually had a question follow-up. So talking about native trees, and I too been following up on what's the definition of native, and it's changing. And if we're gonna set a code, is our list also changing?
Yeah. I think Doug probably follows this
Yeah.
more closely than I, but I'd say that we're not talking about yearly or decadal changes really, and we're talking about generations that we would have changes. Although the Seattle Times has got a front page article on Sunday about western red cedar decline in various places. And
If we're, I mean, basically supporting what you're saying, if we're planting trees, it might not be nice, might not be a clever idea to plant a tree that is, can just barely tolerate the climate here now. Right. I mean, maybe, on our last yellow cedar, for example, we must be pretty close to southern end of its range. You're better off finding something that's native to, that occurs in Oregon and doesn't quite get to Washington, because it's not a decadal thing, but hopefully the trees we plant now will last more than a decade. Hopefully the trees we plant now will last until the climate has really gotten very different.
Yeah.
Does that include avocados? I've been thinking of putting one in.
Well, and that would be the additional question, is it's not necessarily us or the city doing the planting, but our residents. And
Well, most people who are planting trees today, even young homeowners, are never gonna see them become 36-inch trees. Right? So I think what the main interest right now is protecting the big trees that we have now. So I think I had probably a differing opinion on the case that raised this conversation, which was of a sequoia dendron giant sequoia, which I looked at that property and I looked at that tree and I said, the problem is not protecting that tree, the problem is the tree. And it will grow much too big for the spot that it's on. We had a case, I think a couple of years ago, of a tree removal that was up in Sheridan Heights or someplace that was a big giant sequoia. That was removed, and the neighbors are upset because this big beautiful tree, but it was destroying the foundation of a house and the sidewalk and whatever else.
That would probably have been true even if it was a dog fir, though.
Possibly.
So I mean, it's not the fact that it's not native that makes it.
Well,
the fact that it's too big of a tree for that
Yeah, I think
restricted location.
giant sequoias grow bigger, faster than those firs do.
Probably, yeah.
And there's not.
We're very big ducks boys around here, you're right.
We had a visitor in a meeting some months ago who was urging everybody to plant sequoias.
Yeah, no, that's sequoias, not sequoia dendrons. But those are two different species, but redwood, coast redwood is sequoia.
Oh,
But it was giant sequoia that he was going on about.
Oh,
It was, yeah.
so that's
I think that was a misunderstanding somewhere.
oh, yeah, so we need to educate
Yeah.
people, you don't plant a giant sequoia.
I think redwoods actually probably are a better choice, but both of them have a really much more inhibitory effect of the story vegetation. So, you might get a beautiful tree in the canopy, but it's going to be a desert under. And that's, a concern too. Oh, I wonder if there is some tiered approach that we might take where level of protection is greater for our native, say, for instance, the ones that are on the list here, greater in terms of the justification for removing them being much more difficult than for a big tree of a non-native.
you just put non-native and then the threshold diameter 46 inches, 42.
And use a bigger threshold for the non-natives than for the natives. In terms of minimum size, diameter,
Yeah, that would,
that would,
Yeah. or,
we're probably only talking about a handful of species that are commonly occur in the Seattle area that get to be bigger than, say, 40 inches in diameter. Things like redwoods and giant sequoias. Maybe some cedrus.
I mean, not native species.
Yeah,
The red cedar certainly does. And there's a tulip tree in the survey that's 57 inches.
yes, they certainly can.
Yeah.
But
If we say we want to protect big trees, those are big trees.
Yeah.
So,
Did you say red cedar or incense?
said-
cedar?
red cedar, yeah.
native red cedar.
But that's native.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in
What-
terms of non-native, like
Right.
don't
That's
incense,
what he was talking about. You're right. What he was talking about.
Or even anything that's not on the list, so the
incense
Southwest
cedar.
tribal carpet is a native. It can get over 36 inches readily in moist habitats where it's got plenty of water, but it becomes more hazardous as it gets bigger.
Yeah, that's a difficult situation because I mean, if it's had become hazardous, then I think that there's other sections about hazards in the tree code
Yeah.
sort of trumps. I don't know if that totally trumps the
Yeah.
Article 3 thing, but it's, you know, if it's a hazardous tree, you can take it down. What you're talking about though is just things sort of, well, it may become hazardous when it gets bigger, so we can take it down now, which is, you know, there was a TV show about that a long time ago, where they were predicting who would commit crimes and putting them in jail before they did, as a movie. But,
Yeah.
but the thing to do is not, you know, discourage people from planting.
Yeah, or have them in places where they aren't close to infrastructure where they would be at risk, because there's some nice ones along. Never remember which street it's which over here, but the one by the gas stations that comes in through the side of them.
That's McAleer.
That night, there's some nice ones in there where there's, that's what the flatland, it's not close to houses in commercial structures.
And of course, this is something we're doing that we can discourage people from planting in the wrong places. That will help the tree board in 2060.
Yeah.
But it needs to be done, because now is the time to help the tree board in 2060. If they have a 48-inch cottonwood, you know, near a tree, near a building or something like that, or near a power line.
So do we, I mean, you know, with the identifiable exceptions such as, you know, a very big cottonwood, which could become a hazardous tree. Is there any reason we can think of why we would want the city arborist who has to make these open decisions to want to have differential criteria? Yes.
Well, it has to be, the arborist has to follow what the written guidelines are.
Yes, although the arborist does have some,
Yeah, certainly, but I mean, I think that the guidelines anyway have to be in, you know, in terms of the council wanting us to review these. That, you know, they, with the aim of incorporating them into the ordinance, then we need to specify those trees such as populars.
is it worth doing that? Or just, I mean, that, like, Doug said, there's, you know, hazardous tree is a mitigating factor for removing a big tree.
Yeah.
If it becomes hazardous.
My inclination would be to let the arborist say above 36 inches, get special protection, but you know, the arborist can use his or her judgment that, you know, it's a big tree, but it's really a terrible, well, like those Lombardy poplars along the Gilman.
I think they were both Lombardies and
But anyway, the arborist says, well, this is a 36-inch tree, but it's right next to all the power lines, the power poles of Lake Forest Park. Let's get rid of it, even though it is 37 inches. I don't know.
I like the simplicity, and one of the reasons I wanted to revise these sizes is that having different sizes for different species, especially when it's all within the range of appearance, it just didn't make sense. Interpretation by the public and enforcement by the city and the arborist. But the public doesn't know that they're just taking a grant for it. It's just like,
As it happens, and according to the data, half of these trees never get this size. I mean, there are no western white pine trees that are close to that size in the survey.
yeah,
Nor are there any western hemlocks, nor are there any grand firs. They're just,
I know a few Western White Pines in Lake Forest Park, there's most of that. One of them was taken down a few years ago. It's a house that built in our house. I'm really happy about that. It was in a spot that didn't need to be cut. But one of those cases where the developers came and cut every tree off the lot before they started to do anything else.
Yeah, friends of mine have a significantly large western white pine, but it's dying slowly. They don't live as long as the firs, is what I've been told by arborists.
possibly. I think they just spend a long time on the mountains, but maybe not here.
Yeah, I think this is the edge of the range for Western White Pine. You don't see them down at sea level very often. Well,
But anyway, if we go to a uniform size, doesn't matter what, but there's a lot of them or a few of them.
Yeah.
They'll be protected over that size.
And then do we want to have any species that we protect at smaller sizes like madrones?
I think that's important.
This is where it gets to be tricky. Because
I-
there are some fabulous magnolias, for example. They never get to be 36 inches, but a 12-incher might be just as nice to maintain as a 12-inch madrone. So where do we, draw the line on deciding which trees that never get to 36 inches are worth protecting if they're at a smaller size? I think that's the emotional case for the madrone, partly because it's nature, it's native, and it's.
Well, what is 6 inches DBH? That's not a huge tree. That could cover I mean, you can't just take down
Anything, right, anything
Anything.
out over 6 inches is
Yeah.
subject to the code.
it's subject to the code. So in other words, in that instance, certainly if it's in a hazardous area, I mean, a landslide prone area and stuff, people have more difficulty with it. But also it's an opportunity for an arborist to say, you can just prune this back. And, in other words, that tree that's 7 inches DBH isn't gonna be just cut down willy-nilly. And it's nowhere near the 36 inch, but
So do we
there is some protection there and a lot of them, aren't a whole lot more than the ones that you're talking about. I assume many of them are over 6 inches, but aren't huge. So they are afforded some degree of protection.
Yeah, so then why have any special minimum for exceptional trees versus the drones?
Because
Because there is an emotional attachment to the drones.
no, I didn't mean on Jones, I meant in general, why do we have 36, it's a native, I think that's an unusual name, yes, there's an emotion. I would argue with that, but
Another point about the drone would be that it's actually one that's going to get better adapted to this area.
there you go,
Yes.
yeah, there's
In
a.
fact, even though they suffer in urban habitats because of fungal infections and things like that, but they do like drier habitats, some of our native trees.
I mean, of course, they grow all the way out to California and coastal habitats.
They do particularly well up there in Port Townsend, and so rain channel effects areas on them.
Right.
In my yard. I've got big ones that are 10 years old.
Some of the nicest ones in Lakewood Park were at that house near your place. By the reservoir. Well, so is it our opinion that we recommend that we simply do away with this table and just say exceptional trees are any tree over 36 inches diameter?
Well, I think we talked about it a fair bit. Once we get some data and can say 36 inches would protect 2% of the trees, then we can decide that's the direction we want to go. I think we don't want to make any changes to the code now.
Right,
So,
but
we can sort
but
of
that's just
not to have the same discussion again when we get the data.
yeah. We can then sort of fine tune whatever size we think we might want to set as a minimum.
Could I add something?
Absolutely.
I've appreciated hearing this. When the council was considering the first round of tree code changes and did some initial talking about the diameters, there was a fairly strong preference on the council for it to be data driven. And there was some concern that if it was made too uniform in the name of simplicity, but it wasn't supported by the data, that would be actually a harder sell. Because then it would seem a bit more arbitrary that, oh, you just chose 36 inches or you just chose 42 inches. So I think it's very important that whatever the tree board comes up with needs to be supported by data.
Well, so if we go to a broader range of species protected, that is not specify only certain species, and then go with size of the tree as the primary determinant, and that would sort of get around that. right? And we would be saying, we think, we want to protect 3% of our forest, large trees in our forest, and that will be, trees down to 36 inches or 38 inches or 34 inches or something like that. And not have to say, well, we want to have 3% of our grand fir protected and 3% of our Douglas firs protected, or is it okay to have 1% of our grand firs and 5% of our Douglas firs? I don't know.
We could certainly, when we get the data, this would be really simple, say, we're recommending a size of 36 inches, let's say, that will protect 2% of the trees in Lake Forest Park, but it will protect 5% of the Doug firs and 3% of the red cedars. Because those trees tend to be bigger. So we would certainly be able to provide that information. And I think that is important. I think, I'm more interested in protecting Doug firs than I am protecting some of these old trees that get planted by the roadside.
And I think, we could also, once we have data, give, a series of, say, 2-inch increments, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, and say, here's what % of trees will be protected if we simply use this as a cutoff, and then have some species by species variation under that. I can see that point, that it might be, we might be writing off, say, grand fir or some other species, western white pine, if they never get that big. But then it becomes a species desirability discussion, right? Rather than the size of the tree and its role in the cannabis structures. Is it really worth saving a 32-inch, let's say, for example, the 33-inch grand fir, let a 42-inch, 41-inch Douglas fir be removed? I don't know. But that's what the old size limits would. Well, that's good info, Larry, though, and that will, whatever we decide to recommend, we'll try to justify it.
What do you think the council, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, would rather have us say something like, we recommend protecting 3% of the trees, that creates a diameter limit of 34 inches? That
I could see that could be one option. Another one could be, these are the 10 most important species. We want to protect the top 3% of each of those 10. My gut is telling me that either of those approaches would be reasonable. But yeah, I can't speak for I think that there was just concern that we wanted to make sure that it was whatever we came up with was based on data, on the inventory data.
we don't have any, assuming the next survey comes out like the last one, we won't have enough data to really talk about 10 species intelligently. There's not that many. In the, if you only have 10 trees in the sample, but you can't really say much about the size distribution. We do have enough. Doug fir, big leaf maple, western red cedar are the ones we have large numbers of in the sample. I think there's one other, but I can't think of what it is. But there are about 4 species that it's actually worth looking at and saying, yeah, it's protected. It's about 4 species. About 4 species per herd have enough data to say intelligently it's protect about 3% of them. If there's only 7 trees in the sample size, you can't really say much about it. That's true for great many species. It's just one advantage or disadvantage of meeting in person. I have my shooter here with all those things.
Well, anything else we want to add to this discussion before we move on? It will obviously be returning to this once we have the data, which will probably be 6 months to a year from now, having full data available to us. But it's good that we have this discussion. I think we more or less all agree that having giving protection to large trees is really what we want to do. Probably whoever drafted this initially was thinking about our native trees, which are the preponderant dominant species in our canopy, but there are lots of individual other trees around that would be nice to protect. Okay. moving on, the next thing on here is replacement tree plantings in the city. And the main issue that I have about, that I want to address about this, which I'm going to defer for the future, is what I mentioned when I read that piece about Spokane. That I really think we should try to develop a plan to plant more trees in low canopy, and also currently low socioeconomic neighborhoods. And Riley, I'd like to get together with you sometime over the course of the next month or two, whatever, once they're settled in, and we can talk about how we go about this. Who in the city we would need to work with to identify neighborhoods. I sort of have an area in mind from my just survey work, but yeah.
Yeah, the surveys, the LiDAR data that came out before, it's very clear about, when we have all those data about where there are not trees. So consulting that is a shortcut.
And the other one that is the idea that I outlined a few meetings back was, the biggest, most egregious urban heat island in the city is the parking lot right here in the town center. And I think it would be great if we could convince the city to take the portion of the parking lot that they own and do a pilot study where they remove a few parking spaces, plant trees, try to increase shade, reduce summer hot temperatures and things like that. All the other things that go on with it.
Did we, check, but, so the tree code amendments update, that was covered along with the tree inventory. So they kind of blend into each other.
We haven't really talked about the tree inventory.
Okay.
Yeah, and
You say,
it's not, we didn't get that explicitly on the agenda. It falls sort of under. We can ask Councilmember Goldman in his report to let us know where we stand on that, or Nick, perhaps, if someone knows.
Tree inventory.
That, Riley, if you aren't up to speed on that, this is a study that we've been mandated to do. And it's, you were here last week.
Yeah.
The outside consultant.
Yeah.
Well,
Who isn't here, correct?
right, but that will be.
If it helps, I don't have an update beyond that. The council will be appropriating funds to continue the inventory next year. Beyond that, I don't have an update on where it stands. Other than that, as we're in the rainy season now, so I'm pretty sure the physical inventory progress has slowed.
Yeah, and there was.
I have a bit of information on it. I know that we attempted to contact the property owners that we needed access to. And so we're sort of waiting to see, some property owners were less than responsive. So we're sort of waiting to get the word back. But the arborist that was working with us had started the process of contacting the homeowners and stuff. And he obviously left. So we're sort of in a holding pattern, sort of pending the hiring of the new arborist. That's all I really know about it at this point.
Actually,
Thank you. Go ahead, Sandy.
following up on what you just said, Nick, with the letter that was sent out by the arborist, we didn't get enough, I seem to recall, we didn't get enough responses in the yay. And so we do need to do a second round of outreach to and I think that I had volunteered to go ahead and follow up with a second letter that was slightly adjusted to say something that didn't include, you already did this once. I was also looking for, we'd also need to know what that target demographic and locations would be, what property owners or would we approach with that letter. And then, yeah, we still, as mentioned, would need to wait, I think, until we had an arborist before we sent it. So we can do those two parts once we have a name.
Yeah, the nice thing is, of course, we now have about 6 months with, they can't really do any work in the field, so we have 6 months to try to get
Okay.
a few more public responses. It's depressing how few responses you got. How few people responded at all.
Yeah, so maybe a second letter then to a follow-up letter to the previous inventory people and a new letter trying to reach out to new folks.
Realize it probably is a fatally flawed idea, but we might be able to see volunteer landowners to have some
Yeah.
plots on their property. That takes away some of the randomness, but if there are none, they're scattered. What do you think, Doug? Is that?
I don't know, it sounds like it's something you're gonna get a very biased sample that you're gonna get, I don't know, I'm not sure how much you biased, but it would be. No, I mean, of course, it's very biased anyway, because some people turn us off, some people don't, but,
Right. And it would, if those samples, some new samples were added that way, as long as they then became part of the re-inventory at whatever time it. At least.
I don't know, you might wanna ask, the guys who are doing the field work, because they got some good statisticians on there, they can ask whether that's fatally flawed the analysis for them.
Well, how did they come up with the first time we did this with the first
They put
list?
a map on a dartboard. No, I think there was some
There was
effort
strategy.
to make a random sampling throughout the city. Some of the plots ended up,
2 trees.
right, in urban areas on sidewalks or in water.
I mean, I do know that, yes, you not only have to re-inventory the existing previously inventoried at a certain percentage, but you also need to add to that. And
Especially if you know,
I do know that we
ratchet
haven't
it
done
down
that.
because people don't.
No, well, that's part of the project for the summer, for the winter,
Okay,
to be generate some new ones.
Okay.
They weren't totally random because they ended up with, they stratified it by the size of the lot or the zone lot size, and that's actually quite different, it turns out. But they stratified it so that the larger lots were sampled less. Because I think the small lots tend to be much more variable than large lots, and so statistically, you want to put more of your sampling in places with more variation. Now they really oversample the small lots and really undersample the large ones, but I'm guessing that they had statisticians who said, yeah, that's what you need to do. I'm guessing, but it's such an extreme oversampling of the small lots that I think they must have had somebody say, yeah, that's just how. And it's true, I mean, it is true from looking at data that the small lots are a lot more variable than large ones.
so, but those are two things we can do before
Yeah.
we get the arbors, so that we're ready.
So, but I think we're gonna have to wait until the arborist stop board before we start contacting. new-
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, we can prepare the
And we-
communication and we
Yeah.
can follow up on what that list would be. But we can't send it without an arborist signing.
So, I mean, I guess if that's something you wanted to work on in advance. you could, but it might also be. We're just waiting till we have the arborist on board. With that. That's what I would like.
It is sort of a nuisance that the only way we have to contact people is by snail mail. I don't know what the alternative is, but it's possible that if somebody, particularly the arborist, can call them. But I don't think there's any real way to connect addresses to phone numbers. Particularly if they know the cell phone. And the same thing, you might, it's either you might work to go visit them individually.
You can,
That we could do. But,
we can get the property owner name and addresses
right, so we could go visit if we wanted to. I don't know.
and then send the letter out.
Yeah.
But yeah, mail, post office.
What numbers are you talking about?
50.
50? For my project, I had probably 25. maybe not that many, maybe, just 15 or 20. And those that didn't reply, I did go door to door. I only had one slammed in my face, which is good. Yeah, so that, it's actually, it's a fairly viable way to do it. And many of the people whom I contacted went, oh, yes, 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 I meant to deal with that. Oh, well, here's the deadline. Could you maybe just sign this? And at that point, they had to have it notarized, which is crazy. But now that it's, there's that permission then with COVID, we decided we didn't have to get it notarized. And we provided the notary free here, but still had to come down and do it. But I don't think that's an issue for you guys. So, many of them are like, oh, yes, 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 I meant to take care of that. So that is something that I think, it's time consuming for one person, but it goes pretty quickly. That was my experience.
I actually did something similar just in my own neighborhood. I tried to just get a map of the neighborhood and see who lives where. And get email addresses for all of them. And it really wasn't that time consuming. People were really nice about that, but of course I wasn't asking them to get on their property. I just wanted to know their name. But, a couple hours for 20, 30 people.
Yeah.
So, no, they're all in one neighborhood. They're not scattered around the city.
Right.
What was your project real quick that you did that for?
The McAleer.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussions of tree inventory? The next item is the public outreach. This is something that Sandy's been doing some work on, and there's a couple of handouts that she, for different things she's been doing.
Right.
Go ahead, Sandy, you want to do the,
Well, actually, the first one I was gonna talk about was the proposal for the customer satisfaction survey.
okay,
So I don't know if everybody else got it, but I got a climate survey.
Yeah.
From the city, which I filled out, hope y'all did too. And, so the timing is pretty good if we wanted to follow up or piggyback that with our own proposal for customer satisfaction. So basically it's the exact same format, you use monkey survey. Almost the exact same content, except that instead of, it'll be coming from the tree board, of course, and what we are looking for is general input from, my proposal is general input from anyone who submitted a permit. Start with that group. They're qualified in that we already know that they at least tried to go through and to successfully manage to submit an application. And just ask them open-ended questions, pretty similar to any permit service. What permit did you do? How would you rate the quality of our service? How are you treated? Etc. And this leave a lot of, it would take a lot of work to go through the data we're going to receive back, but leaving open-ended comments can bring out information that maybe we're not anticipating. I think that would be a really good way of getting feedback. If we made it anonymous, etc., similar to the one that was sent out for the climate survey. Would that get a lot more positive and negative open-ended responses, and it can help us drive exactly what it is that we're looking for what do we update with the code, how do we update the permit service information, education that we might need for how do you submit a permit, why do you submit a permit, things like that. And we can kind of guess, but those are the kind of things that this can definitely lead to for prioritization.
We don't ask questions like that, though. Is it, I think it's worthwhile to get a little more specific, whether parts of the process that cause difficulty, or did we start, I think you said something about it going, process going smoothly, but did the process go as you expected it to? Because that's what we're trying to get at, is how do we make it easier for people to, not resent getting a treatment.
and what's the information you had up front helpful or adequate to
Yeah.
understand the process?
Exactly, yeah.
I think the other question that you haven't put on here, but probably should be, is what parts of the tree code did you find most difficult to deal with? And
That's what I think.
I think it'd be a good idea, and I think we could probably just really put the computer to write to our last two arborists and ask them, same question, what parts of the tree code people have a problem with?
So, actually,
Because we can't really do very much about what we can.
no, we can't. 100%. That's actually a second suggestion. That's a second suggestion. So, on the customer satisfaction survey, it sounds like you gave early on the idea. Can y'all go through and get back to me with suggestions for content updates? Because I literally copy and pasted and threw together some ideas, and so it's not very detailed.
As far as extracting information from open-ended responses, you can do that with keywords, so that, you know, it's fairly straightforward. But when you pick up
Yeah.
keywords, you can start to see patterns.
I think one question might be something, why did you request a permit?
Yeah.
There could be a series of options.
Okay.
You know, that we can come up with as choices rather than having it just be on the number. Like, to construction,
Too much shade.
get too much shade open, or just a gardening landscaping decision. Neighbors, dangerous, perceived danger, and something like that. I think we can probably come up with 4 or 5 options. We cover most of the.
View, or improve view, or
Yeah, local responses. Local responses. Do a mix-
That would give us some idea about why people want
Yeah,
those trees.
do a mix of local response and.
so maybe we could have 2 sections of the questionnaire for, I mean, some of this stuff here, you know, how would you rate the quality of our service? We don't have a lot of control, but the people at the desk do. We do have
The
control.
city service,
Mhm.
because it's really the city.
Well,
City, right?
yeah, so
Okay.
that's actually kind of what it is. So, you know, that's where I agree. So, you know, when you handed the permit in, did you have trouble? Did you find it easy to do this online? Why didn't you? You couldn't do it online. There's that, but was it the arborist, or was it your neighbor, or, right? Yeah, that was kind of one of my ideas too.
Yeah, well, just asking for a rating isn't going to give us more information. So. I like the idea of being more specific about, you know, if you handed it in at the desk or online, and depending on the response, how was that? You can set up some responses for that too.
But I think if the tree board is doing it, we also need to have something about things the tree board can do something about.
Yeah, so that,
We can't do much about it, Riley is rude.
Well,
that gets back to what Doug said about, you know, what specific things in the code created problems already. Anxiety. Homeowner.
so one of the things that I didn't put on here was the code. And one of the reasons that I didn't put the code on here specifically is actually because as a general non-forestry tree professional, if I was to go submit a permit, I wouldn't really know. I mean, if I even got around to actually filling out the paperwork and handing it in, the code is probably not necessarily, I would see the link, I would go to it, I would probably not get through it because it wouldn't apply to me. I would merely be submitting my request and paying my $80 to ask an arborist to come out and tell me.
But for an individual tree, you don't need to do that, that's it. I've taken out 2 trees in my yard, you've taken some in your yard. You just fill out the form, say, I want to take out this tree. But currently, there's a little place to draw a map of your yard with this tree, then the arborist, or maybe it's Riley, looks online, says, okay, that tree he wants to take out, it's about 684 square feet. She's got to replace with 2 more trees. But there's no need for an arborist for a small scale project, which is the majority of the applications. may not be the majority of the trees.
Arborist Bolt isn't in the business of consulting with residents.
So one of the ways I thought about phrasing that particular question would be, some of these are kind of ask a question and then a follow-up. Did you even review did you review the tree code? Yes, no, if yes, tell me more, if no, tell me why not.
Well, the tree code is partly on the application, so you should probably look at the application for a permit and see what information it asks for, it doesn't ask for, or does ask for. And we probably could improve on that. I know we can improve on the application form. The last time I looked at it was not as easy to deal with as it could be. But
I found it confusing, though. That's all
Yeah.
honest.
yeah,
Yeah,
but they don't have to look at the code per se, they just have to look for a permit application. So if they didn't look at the permit application, and they filled it out, then
so one thought would be, instead of calling this a customer satisfaction survey, would we call it something else?
Tree code follow-up survey, tree removal
tree
follow-up.
permit, tree permit.
Tree permit,
uh,
or so just tree permit survey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Customer satisfaction survey, is a big name, but it's probably a tree permit,
Well-
better.
Like I said.
But all I'm saying is, if you're talking about, you look at the tree code, but you don't have a tree code, I mean, I have.
Yeah.
Tree professional.
Yeah.
But it's your homeowner wants to take a tree out, all you have to do, really look on the form and say, you know. What's the answer to these questions? The questions aren't very complicated.
Is the purpose of this to find out if people are looking at the tree code, or to find out if they're satisfied or not satisfied with the process for getting a permit?
Yeah, I guess both really.
I think that my understanding and the reason that prompted me to kind of propose this was that there is a general PR issue within the city of Lake Forest Park with the challenge that comes from submitting a tree permit in the first place, and then the challenge of satisfaction with getting that tree permit executed. And so step one is we know who submitted. That's easy. So start there. And then a follow-up to the tree permit survey would be a little bit more general. How do you feel about trees to the citizens of Lake Forest Park, or anybody who thinks about Lake Forest Park? But that seems a little premature.
I'd say we wouldn't get very many responses from people who've never been through the process of doing a tree permit, right? And
Right.
that's really on people we want to get
Right.
feedback from.
Right, and there is an open question right here that says, have you submitted a tree permit application before? If no, why not? And that would be like, oh, we might hit somebody who forwards it off to somebody who does, want to fill out the information about why they didn't, which would be helpful for us. And then we can use that information to drive. We can use what
Well, you said it's anonymous, it's incriminating, just.
could be anonymous, the way that, you fill it out.
They may have not submitted a tree permit application because they never under this.
Right, right. But
Well-
I assume we're sending this to the people who filled out.
Yeah, I think that's.
That I think is the start,
That's-
but
yeah.
you never know. Maybe they tried to a couple of times. I don't know. You never
I
know.
know that 2 falls ago, we had that booth at the. Maybe it was longer ago than that, before the pandemic started, right? And we had the booth at the
Farmers market.
farmer's market.
Oh, that was last year.
Was that that was last year, that's right, because we were giving out those seedlings last year. And Ashley was there for the whole time. And we had several people stop by who were unhappy. And, wanted to sort of chew on someone for the problems they had with getting a tree removed in the tree code, the permit process.
I mean, my tree removal cost $400. And and then the removal. That was just getting permit.
400 to get the permit, because you had to have somebody come out.
I
and
had, to-
sign
I,
it.
I had to have a site visit, I had to get a permit. She looked online, said everything you have is landslide. So you have, the only way you can remove that tree is to get it declared a hazard tree, so I had to pay someone over $200 to come out and look at it and say, yes, this tree is not healthy, it is a hazard tree, and the only reason I wanted to take it out is because an arborist told me it was gonna fall on my house, and I didn't. And, you know, and then I had to pay to have it removed. So it cost me $1,000 to take out 2 alder trees. So, you know, after that, I'm a lot more empathetic with people who
Yeah.
bitch about it. I mean, that's a lot of money to take, you know, I could have just had a friend with a chainsaw come by and take it down. Wouldn't have hurt anything, you know, so. Plus, I had it snagged and it's continued to grow, so now I probably have to take it down anyway.
I've heard of many of those. So, okay, so I'm gonna take a look at this and then she's already probably followed with you.
There,
Get
the
some more.
offer.
Oh, I was hoping I might give the council perspective on this. So kind of echoing a bit of what Doug said, that I can see 2 reasons why residents would be unhappy. One would be if it's the process, they didn't like the process, it cost too much, it was too slow, something like that. And that's more on the administrative side. And the other would be if they wanted to do something and they were told no. Like they want to remove this tree and the city says they can't because it's too big or it's in a critical area or such. And that's the sort of thing that there might be legislative action on it. The tree board makes recommendations to the council to make some tweaks to the code. And so there was a way for the survey to kind of tease out, are you unhappy for because of administrative reasons or because of policy reasons? I think that would be very useful.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think the last time I took a tree out, because we had to replace it, there was some requirement for the size of the replacement trees that was really kind of onerous. It was just barely the borderline of what I could lift and move into my yard.
6-foot conifer or 2-inch diameter deciduous.
Yeah, see, 2-inch diameter deciduous trees, a damn big tree. I mean, I don't think I got quite a 2-inch tree, but the trees I got, I could just barely move. My wife had to help me with that part of it. Move it. So that's, maybe we don't want to demand that.
I think,
And that, by the way, that's no longer in the code.
I think I told you, Doug, that I planted dozens of trees on my property. Of them all, I mean, hundreds probably. 2 have been big enough to qualify under that. I've got a story that I really liked in a Chinese wood chase line, because the trees that I bought are good sized trees. But, you know, I plant seedlings. And I nurse them through until they grow to be big. But I think part of the issue is that a lot of homeowners won't have that, take that care.
Yes.
And the goal is to have these tree replacement trees actually survive to become part of the canopy. And if somebody plants a small tree, it doesn't care for it, not.
Of the 6 I had to plant when I first had the property, 4 died. There were 3 cedars, 3 hemlocks, and only 2 cedars remained. And I watered them, you know, through the first year, and they looked pretty good for a while, and then they broke. You know, I don't know,
There's no follow-up.
Yeah.
The city doesn't
no,
follow up to see that the replacement trees have actually survived.
But the code says they both, by the way. But the code says the trees are supposed to survive. Doesn't say we're supposed to follow the check.
Yeah, but you know, we need much bigger arbor staff.
Right.
Sort of follow up.
But yeah, so there needs to be a balance between what the homeowner can realistically do and what will realistically get a chance to survive.
But I think that code also provides for the arborist to use his or her judgment on all of these issues.
and part of my complaint with that was if I put in smaller trees, it don't look as fine.
Yeah.
Having to put in the 6-inch conifer, they don't do as well. It takes them 5 years to get to 6 feet maybe, or, you know, but then they're really solid.
But again, most people aren't gonna take good care of you. Fix it.
Well, some of the cedars I put in have been done really well with benign neglect that were small that friends gave me. I mean, we're talking trees that are, you know, some of them were this big, but now they're 4 feet better and just now really getting going. You know, it takes them it takes them 5 or 10 years to really get something.
That's reminiscent of the tree. Years and decades ago, long before I lived in Lake Forest Park, I wanted to plant a plum tree in the backyard. And I went to Ernst, so long ago, there was an Ernst. And I bought this tree, that's only $9, it's a real bargain. I got it home and discovered the root was about that big. But it grew, it produced buckets full of prunes before we left that house. So, like you, yeah. If lucky and you take care of it, no trouble.
So actually, Doug, you'd also, I'm gonna go and follow up on this, but you had also mentioned surveying the arborists.
Right.
And so I did actually also have a proposal for that. I just didn't write it up because it's a little more. So I did see in the newsletter that we have somebody new in HR, or we have HR. And I was wondering if the city had actually done exit interviews for the arborists when they departed. And if not, if we could do a follow-up exit interview, it's pretty standard, you know. And we could also propose questions if they hadn't done it, or if we could have permission to follow up.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good
I think
idea. Ask
and also for the future, I think we should absolutely request.
I'm not sure if we can pose it in the terms of an exit interview. I think that's a city
Well,
HR thing, but I think
right,
we could ask them what elements of the tree code permit process did you think worked well and didn't work well? You know, yeah. I'm sure Ashley and Harvey would both be willing to.
yeah.
Actually, still in the area, I just Google her, she's still doing creamer. I don't know her Harvey, it was easy to contact actually.
Harvey actually had relatively little experience, but he had enough that he decided he didn't want to do it.
That's probably better with the hash.
I don't think you need an exit interview for him. I think we know.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so part two.
part two.
So Sam, you want suggestions from us for questions that might be good on this? What are action items?
Yes, absolutely. Your action items are to review this and get to me your questions
Okay.
and suggestions, what you'd like to see on it, et cetera. Then
You
I'll
call that-
kind of sum them all up, and then Marty, I'm looking to you to help with. And of course, add that list. And actually, if I may say it also, the same thing for questions for the arborists.
I think the artists can be, that can be pretty simple, just, you know, what were the problems? Yeah,
Right.
and they will.
Yeah.
Either spill their guts or not.
But Dick, can you just write on behalf of the board?
Yeah, I'll try to get,
Yeah,
um,
perfect.
see if we can track down Harvey, and he said, actually, it's their own business, I think, or something.
I think so, yeah, I a couple weeks ago, I did, I just think I Googled actually had a actually feature, something like that. Most of the things I got from Googling actually were part of the city.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is the same calendar for December 2022, January and February 2023. It's the same as I had for August, September, October. Oh, no, September, October, November. And so the way to read this is that the second Wednesday, the content is due for the publishing on the e-news. And then at the end of the quarter, that goes rolled into the Times. So the proposal for December is to do something about the Christmas tree dilemma. Everybody in December has the dilemma of what do I do with my Christmas tree?
After, disposal you're referring to?
Yeah, which tree to get, which tree, I think, well, this one's about which tree to get.
Yeah, that was one that, Margaret, I think, really asked.
And then, the follow-up, so that was actually a content option was my recommendation that I think I talked to you about, was one, that gets sent out, what tree do I get? That's this one, but then if we could get content for a follow-up, what do I do with it? I noticed there was something in January of 2019 about a tree recycling event.
I asked Steve Bennett about that
Yeah.
today, email, he didn't he replied to the email with answers to other questions, but he didn't say anything
Okay.
about that.
Yep.
So,
It either, we either have it or we don't.
yeah,
but
so we can.
If we do
continue
that,
to
seems
do
like a
that,
good
Find
thing.
out by next month's meeting,
Yeah,
perhaps.
well,
Well,
Yeah.
Just pick it up to look by the roadside.
well,
There's a ravine out back in our place.
honestly, we use the Boy Scouts.
Well, I was gonna say, we have
So,
Boy Scouts to take ours, but I
Right.
thought, one year I looked into it, and said, I don't have to, you don't have to give money, but it's a contribution.
well,
I
right,
think I read, one year I found this figuring out by the.
Yeah.
And would have done, work.
Yeah.
Or,
So, right, and then, for, for both,
Is this Christmas tree thing like an event, or what is the?
what?
Sort of a drop off for people who have Christmas trees in their home.
Yeah,
Okay,
And what do we do with it? You can actually cut it up, put it in your yard waste bin.
I
right,
Some people
take
don't
20 minutes.
want to do that, and,
so once they're used,
yes, these are
Yeah.
actually the.
Okay.
right,
I just need to, right, comments.
Huge Christmas tree.
right. Yeah, so one content suggestion is in here that is, here's the trees to get, environmentally friendly. But then a follow-up request for content is, what do you do with it after the fact? And actually, if there isn't an event, that might be, in fact, that's actually.
Yeah, that could almost just be
A little
a
write-up,
paragraph at the end of,
yeah,
general thing about seriously Christmas tree.
yeah,
Yeah, it should be there, because if you do it later,
Yeah.
people have already done whatever they're gonna do.
well, and then that actually leads out very good, is that one of the things that, I have in this calendar, same as last time, was, just the assumption that it was gonna go in the newsletter and that's it. But we do have the option, I did figure this out, we do have the option to, include, Facebook, Instagram, like that. If we wanted to do a very, we'd have to figure out how to make this really short. Or post it on our website and a really short introduction, see more here, link. And we do 2 articles, one for, here's a tree, and I was thinking, actually, we might want to get that out this month. This tree one, this month in that format, so that, if I'm going the weekend after Thanksgiving, it's gonna be a little late at the end of December. And then the same thing we do, just before Christmas, or maybe just before New Year's, send out, something similar, for now that you have your W trade. Here's where it goes.
So what do you envision for the first one that would be different from the one Margaret wrote last year? She wrote one though about the pros and cons of
Yeah.
live, of a cut tree versus a living tree.
Yeah, that is that, and actually, I don't see any reason not to repeat content.
Yeah.
So actually, I was going to use the exact same content.
Well, that might be fine. Some people would recognize it, but probably a lot of people wouldn't. But not that it does, you're not thinking about what are the pros and cons of different species of tree as
No, I think
Yes,
it's just,
perfect.
I think, no, not at all. It's not worth it.
People get it.
It's a Christmas tree.
Douglas fir, normal fir,
Yeah,
probably all we
yeah.
see in the markets.
I think I thought it was well written, yeah.
Both of those were 80s plastic.
Exactly, right, yeah, so, okay,
I just like.
I have an orange area pop and then introduce the local down sign.
so then the following two, I think, for January and February, so that actually covers, like December at both ends quite nicely. And then for, January and February, I actually like the existing concept of here's some information about the trees. One idea I did, these are just the two that I had, and again, repeated content is fine. I was actually gonna request that I like this list. And I don't know that these are necessarily out there. I'd have to kind of match them up, but I don't see any reason why we can't get a newer perspective. And so if anyone wanted to volunteer to take on these trees and tell a little awesome story about how great they are in Lake
When I
Forest
first
Park.
started doing these, I had in mind writing sort of little natural history essays about different trees.
Yeah.
Margaret at the time thought that they should all be more practical about how do you prune trees and how do you properly plant trees, how do you, which are valuable things too,
Yeah,
to take into more from a gardener's perspective.
well.
And then there are other things like,
Yeah.
I have been needing to write one about the preamble for the new code, the justification for why we want to have, what the value of a canopy is. And Doug had suggested writing one about the canopy and inventory
Right.
studies and what they mean and how they differ and what.
Right.
value they have.
Just what we've learned, what we got in about 3 sentences, what we've learned from the ones we've done.
I haven't talked to Joanne. I don't know what Joanne's attitude would be about repeat content.
Okay,
You know, she is very protective of word count and
Yeah.
Space in those issues. But she's happy to have us provide content. She's always
Yeah.
happy to, has given us suggestions for space location.
absolutely.
So
So-
can you explain, how does the city communicate with its residents? I mean, I think I get something every month or every 3 months in paper, and as a member of the tree board, I get
So-
something every month.
So there's actually a web page for this,
Right.
that lists your options. So I went a little crazy and I'm on, I think I'm feeling like it's a spam now. Cause it's a really long list. And so you, can go on and then there's I think every board and the council and the mayor himself, and then like a number, I think each department, they all have a newsletter.
Except us.
And then additionally, there's, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 social media platforms. So there's your email, and then there's also the social media platforms where all of that content can be repeated. And then there is a schedule for that. And that's the Lake Forest Park, the city of Lake Forest Park has its ownership, right? And yeah, all that goes through Joanne. And so this is just proposals
Right.
for, content, and then if you get the content to me, whenever you have it, then we can suggest like, oh, well, Christmas things should come in a timely manner. If you're gonna go get a tree, it should really come out the week of Thanksgiving. If you're gonna recycle a tree, it should really come out the week of before New Year's, etc. Most of and then you guys would know a little bit more too, but are we shopping for plants right now? Because we're considering our budget for the spring, or when do we shop for the trees that we're going to plant? When do we go shopping for our bulbs? When do we go shopping for that pruning, things like that, all have a certain time of year. And so we can have the content, we need to have the content ready at least a month, if not more, but like 3 months before that. When do most people submit permits? I haven't looked at that, but that's another really good
Year
one.
round. We used to get a monthly
Yeah,
raise with the permit app, applications, but then it was every month seemed to be about, 10 to 20.
Yeah.
Permit applications.
yeah, but I can't believe, I'm wondering if maybe December is a low month. Or maybe there's like a high month or something, I don't know. So that's the kind of thing that I'm looking at, in addition to this. So I had, I think, I don't know, it was a couple months ago. A couple months ago, I had a much bigger proposal that included all of the holidays, planting seasons, things like that in a calendar. So like for April, we could do something every day. Yeah, there's so much going on in April. And so having that content lined up and making a decision and priority of what we do or don't want to talk about or announce. And I'm sure there'll be
Do
conversation.
you get the impression that we could post things, for example, on the city's Facebook page?
Yeah.
Whenever we want to, basically? Or is there a,
Yeah.
Joanne control that too?
I assume so, or if not, she'll know who does, or I don't know now.
Or
No.
find out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's typically one person. But you never know. So we do have more latitude on our website. The tree boards site, and the tree permit site, and the tree information that we put out there. And so things like how to submit a permit, how to fill it out. Here's the layman's understanding of tree code. That can all be just put up as soon as we have it. And then what a social media calendar would do on Facebook, as well as emails, would be timely reminders, if you will, to go check on the content. So that's also kind of what this is. And it's very late right now. I think that March, April, and May is going to be the heaviest one. So thank you very much for taking a look at this now, so that we can happily fill that. Title.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this V table is probably more appropriate for February than January.
I wrote that one for a couple of years ago when I noticed one was out in full bloom. It was really middle of the winter, and so I thought it would be
So far in the middle of the winter.
yeah, I mean, I don't remember if it was January or February when it actually was posted, but they flower really early, you know that. Sometimes
yeah,
they
yeah.
flower by the end of January.
Yeah, no, I'm just, person who designed our yard, trying to have something happening every month. I can't recall what's happening every month, unfortunately. But, yeah, no, it could be that early. I would have said February, but hope something's happening in January.
So yeah, so that's another thing to follow up then. So if you have, I write up something new about a different tree, like a madrona that I keep hearing about.
I'll try to get something written in the next month on the survey stuff.
Okay,
Maybe get, maybe get.
There's one I actually have a short list of essays. One of them was on plantings. And Douglas firs are great example, because it's named for Douglas, who was the most well-known plant collector. Douglas, he was scouted. Spent a couple years here collecting all sorts of plants. But the Latin name is Suda Menziesii. And the plant was actually first collected by Robert Menzies, who was the naturalist on Vancouver's voyage to the Puget Sound a few years before Douglas was here. And so both of those, Douglas is one who introduced it to Europe. Menzies is the one who first collected it. Both of them.
yeah,
And for a long time, it was called Pseudotsuga taxifolia, which basically means the false hemlock with leaves that look like you. I felt very sorry for Douglas firs.
Right, because they're not birds.
Well, I just, people could think it'd be better to say about it than it's a false hemlock with leaves like a U. I mean, it's better than that.
Okay. You could prompt us, maybe, for monthly contributions. I think Joanne would be happy to have one every month, but she's also happy to have them the occasional too.
Yeah, I'll follow up with,
My initial thought was that we could have a regular monthly column that was devoted to trees. It's just that there was never enough text produced by board members to keep it going.
oh, yeah. No,
It's mostly been me. I think
I'm gonna sit
Margaret
here-
was one about Christmas trees.
sit here and think you're going,
Good. You maybe sometime write one about the McAleer street project when it's done.
so,
I was just thinking about that.
I think that would be a really cool thing. You put so much work into it. You could say, I did this, I did that. I know you-
And Joanne's happy to have one photo. If you can have something that's.
Yeah.
close to the-
yeah, these all have photos so far. So far, there's at least one. I actually like. But,
That's where you run a bump into spacious. I
Yeah.
submitted two, I think, two of the essays I gave to Joanne, and both times she said just posted one.
I am a big fan of essays having one, but then the social media and the newsletters
yeah.
have two with like this teeny weeny little bit of teaser that says, now go read more. And so I will, yeah. Right, so I'm gonna definitely follow up with Joanne and TC you, Riley, on that, right? Okay. So we'll go for it. So. And then I think that's it for outreach. It's kind of
Great,
a lot,
thank you.
but, yeah.
You're doing great on that. It's nice to have somebody who has the energy and interest to work on outreach.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now we're up to new business. The first item on the new business here is tree board website link updates, and I think that's stuff we disposed of a couple. Has somehow continued to propagate.
So the website.
Well, these are some links. This was on the agenda previously because there were some links that we needed to.
We talked about
Get rid of.
links that needed to be got rid of, like the one that goes to the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think those things have been taken care of.
but we have been talking more about revising where you go to find your tree information
Yeah.
on the city website. And we'd like to continue with that.
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
good.
Not very functional,
Okay, do you have anything you want to?
not right now. not
Discuss about that now.
just-
Okay.
Yes.
Well, then we'll keep that and it will be,
Yeah, it is hard to find anything right now.
So it goes all over the place. It's
Well,
4 layers down and it gets to the document.
yeah, and on the, the first thing under our work plan items is, reviewing the Lakeport Park web content. Incorporated. changes.
right.
There's a-
So here's what I would propose, actually, so, let's keep this on new business for the December. And then, Marty, Mandy and I will get together one more time and finalize, our plan on, what we're gonna do with that and propose that at the December meeting as the answer to the new business, because this has been out there for like, this is like the third or fourth time I've seen it.
Yeah, so that, yeah.
So let's take it off new business and move it into the old business section, and we'll come up with a plan and approach for that. So, Cindy?
Okay, farmer's market booth is obviously something that's not gonna happen this year. Now, farmer's market's gone. And the third thing on here was the new thing I added to the agenda was the 2023 work plan. So this, for those of you who've been on the board for a while, usually is something that comes up and seems to take endless hours. I don't want it to be that for us this year, but we do have a work plan that we're mandated to have. And so we need to track what we have on here, go through it periodically, see if we've made progress on our existing work plan and develop a new work plan each year. So if we have 15 minutes left tonight. So, oh, Larry, did you have anything else you really wanted to present as council from council? No,
I can be quick.
okay, so
I have a question.
you have,
Well, I have a question for all, let's see what you're gonna say.
shall we jump to that and do it now, and then we can then work on the work plan until time zero, and we can just quit going? Okay.
Okay, so two quick updates. We're in the middle of budget season, so that should hopefully be passed by the end of November. Germaine here is increasing arborist hours, but it's a little unclear. It's going to be up 75 or 80%, but it'll be one of those two. The other one, and this is kind of connecting back to the tree canopy replanting, Sound Transit. They have not really provided information. So there's actually a lot of public misinformation about their plans for 5.2. The number going around is they're going to cut down 500 trees, which is, I don't think, accurate. I think they're going to remove or alter about 440, which is still a huge number. And so I think it would be good if the tree board could, when you're coming up with a kind of or tree replacement plan, is think about Sound Transit in particular, because even if it's only a quarter of it, that's still 100 trees they'd be removing. And where are they going to go? And will it be Sound Transit replanting them? Will it be Sound Transit paying money to the city to do it? And so coming up, and then it may be 20 of those could be replanted along the highway where the other 8 go. So I would encourage the tree board to think about what we're going to do with Sound Transit. One more could be a member of the public commented about a sound mitigation wall along 522 and how they would like to see, if you go to Kenmore has ivy, they put ivy on the walls before more visually attractive, natural, and possibly helping with sound. And so is that something that LFP wants to lobby Sound Transit to do?
Definitely don't want that.
I think they,
It's a Virginia creeper.
It's not, it's not.
Not
a
ivy.
good creeper.
It's a creeper.
They call it Boston ivy, whether that's proper ivy or not.
But it's
not
Virginia,
even that.
it's Virginia creeper.
it's not the invasive one that we.
I probably should just add the word bond. They want to find some sort of creeping, that's going to beautify what would be a plain cement wall.
It's just kind of an obsession for this public. He's come to our local neighborhood meeting.
I was not trying to scare you on that. But if the tree board has thoughts on how we might improve on what might be a generic sound wall.
Well, here's the thought, which is, and you see it in Mercer Island, because they have lots of sway, that when those walls go in, they are imprinted with tree leaves or vines and things. And that, that's not really in tree board purview, but those walls can be made to be not so just a blank concrete wall. And they've done that in Kenmore.
Looks like natural cliffs.
Yeah, and
I sort of like that.
in Kenmore, they've done it too. So, I mean, that's just something that the council might want to look at and maybe let's.
Would it be helpful, if I sent you, Vicky is her name, the one who gave the presentation. She shared her PowerPoint with the council. Would be helpful if I disseminated that to you. In which case I will send it to Riley because it's public meeting stuff. So I will send that to Riley to disseminate to the board.
I guess one question about that is that really fall under the purview of tree board?
No, I don't think it does.
Oh, I mean, if you don't think so, then I'm scared.
Yeah, we'd be happy to, chime in, I think, but.
I don't feel like it's just nickels and dimes, so the amount of money we're talking about to plant a few blocks and peepers on or whatever they are. Not I think.
So are these sound walls gonna be for embankments along the hillside to also as landslide prevention? Or are they gonna be those freestanding barriers that you see along I-90 out there in Sammamish or things like that?
Oh, between here and downtown.
I think it's the latter, but I'm not sure. Maybe it would be helpful if I sent the presentation so you can have a context.
Is that along 522? Is that?
Yeah, I think it'd be along the west side of 522.
one of the things that I've read about those is that what they do is they really dramatically reduce sound immediately adjacent to the road.
But
But they dramatically
amplify.
increase sound
They
further away from the roads.
they
They
amplify
reflect
it.
the sound.
I think these are really just talking about sport wall. I mean, the pictures that I saw in the presentation, which I had to look at, they're really just places where the road is gonna get wider and it's cutting into a steep hillside.
Yeah,
But
well, that's, I
it's-
can see, that's what they do in Kenmore.
Yeah, it's just too deep to do.
But you're suggesting on the west side,
But for the hills,
And
that's-
and I don't want to take up, since I know we're running low on.
Well, that's right.
But I'll. Got it. You have a question for me?
Mount Transit. Do you have any idea when we'll know how much money we have to put into planting trees?
It's gonna depend, I think, on how many they're proposing to remove. And the city has been trying to get information from South Transit. And I don't know if Wiley or if you have any more information on it,
Next
but,
one, I wouldn't. If any, but I suppose.
but yeah, there's been some for that. The city recently sent a letter to South Transit expressing kind of frustration and how they haven't been communicated and they don't seem to be working with us. So yeah, I don't have any specifics. But if you can come up, I think we have a scaffold for what might happen, that would be helpful.
I think, it's chicken and egg kind of thing. If we could like, we might be able to make our plans better if we know how much money we had to spend. We can plant 20 trees or 200 trees.
And I think that was the topic at the council meeting, that do we want to set a value, and then with this tree replacement plan, how do we set the value for the tree? In a way that would account not just for the actual replanting costs, but also maintenance. And then if you have to do extra watering for the first couple of years, that's an extra cost beyond just the actual tree itself. And so coming up, how do we determine the value? Yeah, so but we're kind of shooting blind on this because we don't even know how many trees they're proposing.
For a little bit of perspective, there are 250,000 trees in Lake Forest Park. 500 is not a large fraction of them. They are unfortunately 500 of the most visible ones.
do you have a time frame for this? Is it something you're gonna start doing in the
The
current year?
project's slipping, so I think the train has been delayed until 2025, and then the bus line is delayed until 26, and it might slip further, so I don't think it's immediate. But the
Tree
more,
removal comes at the beginning of the whole process. presumably.
right, it's just that the project is getting delayed by various factors. But if you can have some plan in place, they'll make those.
So the train slipped 2025.
I believe so.
That train to Northgate, I mean to Glenwood.
Yeah, the extension from Northgate to Glenwood. And there's no point trying to get the bus up and running until the train has been extended.
But they are doing, when they've been doing boring in my neighborhood for something they need to do for widening the road. For BRT.
And they are, the eminent domain process is ongoing, so they're reaching out. Not very well, but kind of form letters, but they are reaching out to homeowners where they need to take parts of their property to widen the road. That is also a matter of some public frustration.
Yeah.
Probably way more than that. It's free.
What's that?
Don't you do that?
No, I'm not, no, I'm just agreeing with you, like, yeah.
Right, so I think I've taken up enough of your time, so, yeah.
Thank you. Well, let's turn to the work plan. Did you all, was there copies of it for people?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you can see is this was it actually says 2021 work plan. I action items on the first column halfway down. So this was last year's 2022 work plan, and we didn't even update the date on that column. So you can see that for those of you who are new on the board, these work plans simply are carryover, and things are scratched off or added as need, but a lot of things have been on here for are on here regularly. So let's just start down at to see where we've gotten, what changes we might need to make on this. So for example, you can see a lot of names on the lead column as which board member is involved with these things, that our people are no longer on the board. So let's review of Lake Forest Park web content and incorporate code changes. So this is something that's been on here for a long time as we've been waiting for the code, changes to be approved, and most of them now have been. And the next one, the content to improve public outreach. These are related, but the first one is explicitly, how is the code presented in the Lake West Park webpage? We had Dick, Marty, and Doug on this. Do we still want to keep responsibility for this, or is there anyone who wants to join on this or beg off of this?
Sounds like Sandy has already done this. Sandy or Sandra?
You should say Sandra.
Okay, it sounds like Sandra has already been doing that.
This is the code change one.
Well, this is reviewed LLP web content.
Right, so actually that should be changed to 2 lines.
The first and the second are related but different.
Yeah, the first one, I think, this was conceived to be specifically about how does the code, how well is the code reflected in the web page?
Yeah.
As far as being informative and accurate and so on, because there were some conflicts in the past.
And then the second one is more like what we're doing, Cindy, it's reviewing the outreach.
Yes,
So outreach content, develop content to improve public outreach
Yeah.
through city newsletters and other formats, including the website.
so that's what you guys are already working. through.
Yeah.
So we put you 2 down for that.
Yeah.
And Mandy.
And we'll keep, Dick, Marty, and Doug on the first one. Or Sandy, do you want to get involved with that aspect of the webpage? With respect to code? No? No, fine.
But
You're doing such a great job with the other stuff.
Well, you said you're already doing it. Didn't you? So you were looking at both on the webpage? Or?
For the content side.
I am definitely doing line 2. Yeah. But the LFP web content and incorporate code changes. My understanding is that is specifically the code
Yeah.
and the wording of the code and,
Well, it's how it's presented on the webpage.
Right.
The wording of the
So-
code is the council's responsibility. We make recommendations, and most of them are adopted, but
right,
what the webpage is how that information gets to the public.
right. So there's a tree board and information about tree permits. I'm doing those 2.
So that's part of the first one. I would say.
That's what I'm saying. It's-
Okay.
Yeah, so
We-
I'm-
I mean,
Sandy,
there
I'll
are
put
no
you down.
code changes.
You better put me on all of them.
Well, there are no
Okay.
code changes though,
All
right?
right,
At least at this point.
Well, minor ones that we adopted, that the council adopted. That,
Okay.
we,
They need to go on the webpage.
well,
I mean,
I don't know if any of them require going on the webpage. That's why we need to sit down with the code and the webpage and see. Make sure they all.
yeah, I'll work on that then. On that very specific part of the webpage.
Okay.
yeah,
So
there's,
we'll add Sandy to that. I'll keep my name on there nominally, but I'll be happy that you guys. Okay, and Sandy, Marty, Mandy for the next one.
Yeah.
The Ivy Out contest. This was kind of a cool thing when we did it, but it turned out to be really hard to run. Because, we offered rewards but we had no means of measuring or verifying what people did. And it turns out that we were lucky that only, I think, 4 people added entries in that. So,
4 or 6, even maybe a couple more.
and so we sort of gave everybody a reward and said, thank you. But if we want to keep this on there, somebody's gonna have to figure out how to make this work. Julia, you're a Ivy authority. Do you think this is something we should pursue?
I thought it had some value, especially that property along the creek where you gotten it out, and then your neighbors across the way.
Yeah, the people who did it really did a great job.
So even if it's only 1 or 2 people who really get into it to do it, I mean, what, that guy took out 6 tons worth of ivy and trips to the, so it seems to me it had some real value, but I hate ivy, so.
Yeah, but we did it as a contest, which means there has to be judging, there has to be rewards or
Well,
something.
you did all of it pretty much.
Yeah, but you and I helped, I mean, but what I gave them, each contestant a tree out of my own nursery, just, you know, to give them all something. And the reward,
You know, one suggestion, can we just change it on the work plan to say create and host Ivy out event?
well, that may be the thing, and we could just convince as many people to get involved as
And then,
possible.
you know,
Provide the bags to put it in, you know.
be a little more loose on how it works, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Anybody want to be involved with this? Julia is shaking her head, no.
If I might say, while she's not here, this might be something that would fit into Mandy's value. I don't know, would have to ask her.
Well, that's, we're gonna take this up and again, multiple times over the next few meetings, so. And there will be an element of PR around this, and that you probably want to be involved in. Okay, host the annual Arbor Day activity. So we still haven't resolved our Arbor Day activity for this year, and I'm thinking at this point it's not going to happen, although that may yet. We need, this has always been somebody that the arborist has been engaged with, because it has to be a city, there's a city element to it. Which is why Ashley's name was there. And someone has to, you know, we have to come up with a plan for something to do. And this is, I think, mandated as part of the board's responsibility with respect to the city's status as a free city USA or something.
Supposed to do something once a year.
And it has been less well enforced because of the pandemic the last few years, couple of years.
Is this, can it only run up to 9 o'clock?
Yes,
It is 8:59. Okay.
well, then that's a good place to quit. We'll take this up in coming meetings. We'll just have an item on old business to return to the work plan. We'll work through what we've done this year and what we want to try to get done. Thank you for the reminder.
Does there have to be a
I moved
Yeah.
to, end the meeting.
Second. All in favor? Okay. Thank you all. I think this is the first board meeting I have been to where there were no public.
Yeah.
Usually it's my.
Where's Mike T?
Right.
Okay, just want to say exactly.
Someone else. I think that-
He must be sick.
No, I've come to really like Mike. I mean, I
Oh,
think he is so quick to search out things on the web for information
Clarify things.
real time.
The web, the code, memorize the code.